My name is Rebecca. I am a licensed psychologist, and I am also the district psychologist and supervisor of mental health clinicians for Milpitas Unified School District.
Wonderful, thank you. And I guess if you could just give us a brief overview of the district, the population that you serve, and if you have a sort of mission in the community.
Sure. So Milpitas is very diverse. It's a school district. We have 11 elementary schools, two middle schools, a comprehensive campus, and a continuation high school. We have an adult ed program, and we have some early childhood programs as well. We have our enrollment population is, I believe, around 50% Asian students. And we have smaller percentages of every other group that you could imagine in our district right now. Our mission is really to make sure that every student that comes to our school district gets a quality education where they feel validated, heard, and respected, and so that they can go off as adults and contribute to society and the larger community. We're doing a lot of work right now with cultural sustainability and anti-racist policies in the way that we interact as adults, and then also in the way that our schools are run, the way that our students feel when they come into their classrooms, and the way that our families feel in every interactions with our staff. So that is a like a lot of other districts right now, a really large initiative for us. And we're doing a lot of work to make sure that that happens at all the different levels of service provision that we are involved in.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. So what are the typical duties of a trainee at your site?
So the primary responsibilities of trainees at our sites are tier 3 individual counseling. And I say tier 3 because these are interventions that are designed to support between 5 and 10% of our school's population, because interventions at previous levels don't seem to have worked effectively for them. So that is generally carrying a caseload of students that are seen on a weekly basis. We have an expectation that our trainees are providing consultation to parents and teachers on a biweekly basis, and that they are also having biweekly or every 3 weeks meetings with their site administrators to keep everybody in the loop about all the work that is being done, to monitor numbers for caseloads, and to make sure that what is being learned in counseling sessions can be reinforced and generalized in the classroom and at home. This year, because of distance learning, it's actually created an opportunity for us to do a lot more work with our students at tier 1, which is what all students get. All students get tier 1 supports. And so we are working a lot in consultation with our teachers to say, hey, I don't think this is an issue that's going to require a specifically individualized intervention for just this one student. It sounds like this is a skill that a lot of the students could benefit from having. So let's talk about what that might look like and how I can support you to do that. So just some examples that are coming to mind of tier 1 interventions are things like integrating mindfulness practices during the day, breathing exercises, helping kids to understand when their energy levels might be too low for expectations in the classroom, and how to lead your whole entire class in bringing your energy level up so that you're able to benefit from instruction. Opportunities for social connections with each other, because that is a huge missing component from distance learning that we're having to really support our teachers to rebuild for their students, or so to make sure that they still have those connections. So those are just a few of the examples. And now we're also starting to do some consultation with our staff in staff meetings, so that these same interventions are being delivered to staff members in staff meetings and staff trainings to make them better available to support their own students, because they're meeting their own needs. So it's this year's a little different for us in that our approach is a little bit more holistic. And I love the direction that it's taking so far. And really, it's been our trainees that have led the way on this.
Wonderful. And can I just ask a brief follow-up question? And so
Mhm.
when trainees sign on with Milpitas Unified District, School District, are they assigned to one particular school, or how is the decision-making process in terms of where they end up being put, I guess?
Sure, that's a great question. How many days and what sites really depend on how many days the student wants. to be working in our district compared with what the needs are for our district at the time. So right now, as I said before, we have 10 elementary schools. Our program is growing. So we have a mental health counselor that supports every single elementary school, which is a great place to be in. They're not there every day. I wish they were. But their minimum time at each placement is 2 days. We have one elementary school that's still kind of, it's only K through 3 right now. So that person only has 1 day, but once that's a full school, that will be 2 days of service provision, unless and until we can increase that capacity with numbers and making sure that we can compensate our staff appropriately. Next year will be in our elementary schools and our middle schools, which will mean more people. But it really is about like where you are and how many days is really a fit between what the trainee is looking for and what the needs are for our sites and districts. We do ask for a minimum of 2 days because most sites have 2 days, and we want that kind of consistency. Trainees tend to do best in our sites when they can commit to at least 2 days. And we also ask for a commitment of a year, the length of the school year, just to avoid the disruption for children that comes from staff starting and not being able to finish the year. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. So can you talk to us a little bit about how client assessment and the referral process works at your site?
Sure. So our referral process is now 100% online because of everything that is going on. Any staff member, parents, family members, students themselves, if they are of the age of legal consent, they can refer themselves for counseling. They fill out a brief survey that talks about what's already been done to address needs, what the concerns are. We've aligned our referral process with the child and adolescent needs and strengths educational version that we are now using to do formative and summative assessments, and also as part of our progress monitoring. We are a school district, so our formal assessment process looks different than it would in, say, a private practice, in that we don't use the DSM-5 in terms of our diagnosis or ICD. We don't diagnose in schools. So our students come to us with just a concern that has been expressed by the student, parent, or another adult in the student's life. And then we take that information, we do a lot of semi-structured interviews, we look at how the student is doing at school, whether the concerns are related to their performance at school, at home, or both. Do they need to be referred out? Are the behaviors of concern best addressed through school-based counseling? So these are some of the questions that we ask in terms of assessment. If you are looking for a formal assessment according to DSM-5 or ICD-10, schools maybe not a great fit for you at this point in time. But again, you do get that experience for how to take someone's concern, ask the questions to be able to understand what it looks like in different settings and start to get an idea of the function of the behavior and what replacement behaviors exist and how they can be reinforced. Julie, you're still muted.
Sorry, guys. Okay, sorry.
No
Here
worries.
we are. Can you speak to what a typical caseload is for a trainee?
This is a common question. So we don't have a hard and fast number in terms of caseloads, but it's really dependent on what the needs are of the site, and in terms of the cases that are coming in. If it's a case that a student needs to be seen more than once a week, for example, that's rare for us, but if that's what's needed, we'll do it. Or if we have a case that needs a lot of case management or other supports, some kids look like one kid, but really their needs make them look more like 2 kids. And so that kind of moves the number a little bit. For a 2-day placement, we would expect our numbers to be around 10 students, because that's a lot of back-to-back session time. And then also leaving time for things like notes and documentation, communicating with parents and teachers. So it's ballpark 10, but that's not necessarily where, an expectation that I would want people to get to if they had a lot of cases that needed a lot of legwork. I'm also in regular communication with our trainees in terms of numbers and how they feel about their caseloads. We have had wait lists before, although I don't love to do that. it's more important to me that the students in our district get quality supports from their trainees. And so therefore, if that means limiting the number just to make sure that our trainees don't get burned out and they don't feel overwhelmed, that's what we do. We've also gotten creative around caseloads and moving people around if that's what it took to support the needs of the students, to make sure that our trainees could be best supported and not overwhelmed in the work.
Thank you. And can you speak also then to how supervision is structured?
So supervision is based on whatever ratios and whatever Board of Behavioral Sciences certifications our trainees are looking into getting. So if they are aspiring to be marriage and family therapists, we keep them within the ratio for Board of Behavioral Sciences in California of 1 to 10. So we provide 2 hours of group every week, an hour of individual, and then anything beyond that, if the student or the trainee rather needs support around a risk assessment, if they have a question, if they have a case that they're just not sure about, they can get time as needed. But yeah, our minimums are always what is going to be met by the Board of Behavioral Science and programmatic requirements that your school has as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So how is training structured and what kind of training is offered?
So we offer, our trainings are through a variety of settings, such as the Santa Clara County Office of Education. Our students have access to every training that that is offered by Santa Clara County Office of Ed. They can be reimbursed for trainings as long as there's a relevancy to their work and it is not, and it's kind of within a specific time or specific budgetary frame. We obviously can't, I would love to send our trainees to every single training that they want, but this is a school district. So even I have to be realistic about the trainings that I go to. We also provide trainings, or we encourage our trainees to do assist training, which is around suicide prevention when that is happening. It's not happening this year because it's an in-person training. We also offer cognito training. We've had trainees that have gone to the Gottman Institute trainings. They've done that on their own. So if we can't fund it and you think it's important to go to, you can be released from your time in order to go to a specific training. And we will reimburse up to a certain amount as long as you've done the necessary steps to let us know in advance what it is that you're wanting to go to, and as long as it gets approved. Within our supervision group, we do a lot of trainings right now around things like goal setting and progress monitoring, because that's a big initiative for our district this year too, so that we are able to say, hey, we've had this kid in counseling for X amount of time and we think they're doing well, and here's how we know. Or we think this kid can be, is ready to leave counseling as a support, and here's our data to support that. I think that makes us a little unique in that way. But essentially training needs and what we focus on in supervision in terms of our training together is really dictated by what our trainees are looking for. What are they looking to get good at? What are they looking to build their strengths and skills on?
Thanks so much. In your experience, what attributes contribute most to a trainee's success?
This is a great question. I think specific attributes are positivity, energy, commitment to evidence-based practices, and just the ability to communicate. I think that it's eye-opening to a lot of people when they come to schools and they see, what a difference it makes if you can communicate clearly to others, and let them know where you're coming from, and also seek to understand where they are coming from in your communication. That being said, this year has been a great year to practice things like patience, and understanding that people are very overwhelmed right now with everything that is happening, and to be able to accommodate for that without taking it personally. For example, if they reach out and they haven't received a response, or if the response that they received was very short. So I will add empathy to that list in terms of understanding where other people are coming from. And I think also just the willingness to learn from others, whether that's being in supervision and collaborating with your peers, whether it's, getting to know the culture of a school site, or getting to know the specific values of a student and his or her family. I think I hope you weren't just asking for one, because I really had a very exhaustive list.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Yes. So then on the flip side, I suppose, in your experience, what have trainees found most challenging in working with y'all?
I think that everyone has a moment where they realize that schools now are different than schools were when they were in school, and they learn a lot more about what schools are good at and what their limitations are. So right from the beginning, I think people just having a period of adjustment. And I think you learn that it is much harder than it looks to be a teacher. And it is much harder than it looks to be a parent interfacing with a school district. I think schools get a lot of things right, and I think there are a lot of limitations in terms of how we support behavior change in schools and how we support students and families. And I think um, our trainees, where they is where they know that there's a specific practice that should be done. And when they go to consult with a teacher or with a parent, they learn that consultation is very challenging. And that you are very much up against the way people are used to doing things. And it's hard to get people to change their behaviors. So I'd say that's from either an institutional standpoint, because of schools are an institution that we are very used to doing things in a certain way and kind of slow to change. Or if it's a family that's just become used to a specific way of being with each other, or a student that's been used to getting their needs met in a certain way. I think it can be very difficult when you realize that it's a lot more than just talking to someone and then that's it, right? The work is much more about understanding where they're coming from, looking for what their need is that they're trying to get met, and being able to kind of work within their goals and values to help them.
Thank you. Absolutely. Working within systems, it's tough.
Mm.
So I guess in our final question, is there anything else you would like potential CIS trainees to know?
I think that we, as a district, are very interested in alignment between what our trainees want to get out of their placements and how we can help them to develop from where they start to where they finish. I think that we're also, we have a commitment to evidence-based practices that I think changes us and changes us and makes us a little bit different than other school districts, whether that's data collection, consultation, tiered service provision. We are really um, leading with helping our school sites to understand a lot of constructs around what is tier one, what happens in tier one, what is two, what is three. And I know that our trainees have done a lot of education on their own to be able to support these conversations. And that they're, whether it's them and talking to teachers or site administrators or students and families, they're really leading, changing schools, changing our schools from a way where if there's a problem, the student has to be served by someone else in a different environment, to saying, well, wait a minute, how about we keep the student around their peers and just change the school around the student, as opposed to just expecting the student to change. So I think that's really important for trainees to understand. And I think that our current class of mental health counselors is really leading that work in our district.